For over 30 years, while brands were trying to reach consumers, Isaac Mizrahi focused on what truly drives connection. From Coca-Cola to Sprint, and now as CEO of Alma, he has helped the world's leading brands understand the power of the Hispanic consumer. A Forbes contributor and author of Hispanic Market Power, he is one of the most influential voices in multicultural marketing today. Because this market is not a segment, it is a growth engine. As keynote speaker of the Hispanic market, from reach to connection, he will show how insight becomes a real connection. Please welcome Isaac Mizrahi.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the Ola Group for the invitation. Welcome to Miami for those who are not from here. I'm going to be doing this in English because as a Brazilian, there's another Brazilian, yes. I don't want you guys to bear with my Portuñol and my weird accent. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the Hispanic segment, talking about the Hispanic segment, everything related to the Hispanic segment. There is a say in English that, in other languages, that an image speaks for 1,000 words, right? So this image here is actually the cover of my book that I launched in 2023. And when I briefed the creative, Daniel Correa, an amazing colleague from Alma, about the vision, I said, I want to show that the Hispanic market is a growth engine. It's driving sales, driving profits, and he created this beautiful dollar rocket going to the skies. And this is how I feel about the segment. However, it's not an easy segment. I really, really love the question to the previous session to Bernardo, the CEO for Iberia Group, talking about, coming to the U.S. Everybody wants the U.S. growth. Everybody. Very few companies want to invest and have the patience to actually win in the U.S. Hispanic market. And I want to talk a little bit today about my learnings. I came to the U.S. 27 years ago, and I became a specialist in this segment. And I want to talk a little bit about what I see when I used to be a client, and for the past 17 years working as a strategic creative agency, partnering with a lot of great brands. And in the end, I'm going to show you some case studies to show how some brands, two different brands, are winning in this marketplace. They asked me to talk a little bit about my journey because some of you may think I'm a fashion designer, Isaac Mizrahi, right? I'm not him. I'm sorry. I apologize if you came here today for fashion advice. Clearly, I don't have any. But let's talk a little bit about this journey. So I'm Brazilian, born and raised in the beautiful Rio de Janeiro, so Miami is like a second home for me. I came to the U.S. in 1999 when I was working for Coca-Cola. I'm an economist. I have an MBA from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. As I mentioned to you, I'm proud multicultural marketing expert in America. My career started in the corporate side. I worked for British American Tobacco, Coca-Cola, and a lot of telecom companies that don't exist anymore. Bell South, Nextel, Sprint. When you work in telecom, you dated yourself, right? And then 17 years ago, I became an employee, and now I'm a CEO of Alma Advertising. For those who know the advertising business in America, Alma is an amazing agency with a great reputation. It's an agency that has a strong reputation of being strategic and creative. I'm a board director, and I write for Forbes since 2017. Forbes invited me to be a contributor. This week, I launched my article number 100 on Forbes, so you can Google and take a look where I speak not only about the Hispanic segment, but African American, Asian America, sometimes LGBTQ+. And as I mentioned, I wrote this book in 2023. That's a little bit my journey from a professional standpoint. So what really, really excites me about this market, it's growth. I'm going to show you some statistics in a minute, but it's been very hard to find growth in the business environment that we have here in America. And the Hispanic segment represents a significant source of growth. But before we talk a little bit about the basics, the demographics, I got a question in preparation for this presentation that I actually faced when I wrote my book. And it's a very interesting question because it seems basic, but a lot of people still ask me this question. How do I call this segment? Is there a Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Latin with E in the end? I've heard about it. I'm more focused about the growth. I would say I don't care, but that's a very good question. I actually use in my book, in most of my presentations, an article Hispanic, because I want to be gender neutral, and you know, Latino, Latina, you have to write, and since I write a lot, I have a limitation of the number of words. So Hispanic works very well for me, even though as a Brazilian, I know that Latinos and Hispanics are not the same thing. I'm a Latino, but I'm not a Hispanic. Haitians, the same thing. But given that the biggest share of population, the Hispanic population here, comes from Hispanic countries, Mexicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, etc., Hispanic for me works very well. It respects the boundaries for those people who expect gender-neutral language, but at the same time is not fancy like Latinx that most Latinos and Hispanics reject. It's as an invention here in the US. So for the sake of presentations, I use Hispanic, and in the end, it is the official way the US government treats the segment from a census standpoint. So sometimes people want to create polemics, etc. If you go with Hispanic, you're going safe and you're going in the official way. I'm not going to go very deep on the demographics. A lot of you know this. If you want to learn more about this, you know, there are several sources, public sources, census sources you can get from my book if you're interested. But I wanted to highlight a few things just to level the playing field for those who are not that familiar with the size and the power of the segment. This is US Census data from 2020. It has been updated a little bit. Of course, we are going to have the next census in 2030. But in 2021, they reported the 2020 census results, and the Hispanic population was around 62 million people in America. First statistic, people say the biggest Hispanic population in the world outside Mexico, right? So let's start to create perspective. Today, it's around 65 million, 66 million. And as you can see in the pie chart, those 62 million represent 19% of the US population, of the whole US population. It's a big number, right? However, as an economist, what I like to go deeper a little bit in the details, and one slide that caught my attention is this one. So this is the variation of the population from the 2010 census to the 2020 census. So they're saying, what are the segments that grew or declined in this 10-year period of time? So the previous slide that we saw, the 330 million people, 331 million people in America, it was not created equally. The white Caucasian population actually declined in 5 million people during the period between 2010 and 2020. The Hispanic population grew 23% to 11.6, almost 12 million, and then the Black, the Asian, Pacific, and others also grew. The 11.6 million growth on the Hispanic represented 51% of the country's population growth. So let's recap for those who are not very good with numbers. The US population grew, driven by the Hispanic population. More than half of the growth came from the Hispanic population. And I'm not going to show here today, but before some of you may ask, the majority of this growth of the Hispanic population from US-born Hispanics, not immigration. Right? And this is very important. I'm going to be talking a little bit in a second. This premise that the majority of the Hispanics in the US were born here, making them different from the white Caucasian population, but different from Latin Americans born in Latin America. And this is a very important distinction. Now, Every country in the world that has experienced decline in population has also experienced decline in economic growth. It's not good to have your population coming down for several reasons, including the imbalance between retirees and younger people coming to the population, consumptions, etc. So when I see the white Caucasian population declining, which was a surprise, they knew that this population was decelerating, growing slower, but coming to a decline was a big surprise in 2021 when this data was officially released. That shows that the engine of the economic growth in America is also the engine of the demographic growth in America. Us, Latinos, Hispanics, whatever you want to call. This is very important because brands, organizations, corporations, they are not looking at this on a serious way. They're going to be limiting their growth ability for years and decades to come. And remember, the majority of this population was born here. I don't want to talk about politics today, but in some of your minds, and I read minds, I'm reading minds, I know this girl, what she's thinking right now here in top, because she works with me, but the reality is some of you are thinking, what about the politics, White House, immigration? Yes, we're not unaware of this, but the majority of the population is born here. Babies are being born here that to 25, 26, 27% rate being Latinos. This is a demographic trend that's not changing. It may slow down depending on immigration, but the direction is not changing. 2026, we have more Latinos than 2025. 2027, we're going to have more Latinos than 2026, and so on, and so on, and so on. This is the foundation of this discussion that I want to have here today. The demographic trends are not changing. The U.S. is becoming more and more a Hispanic source of population. As a marketer, we need to think, what are the consequences of that? This is not like, yay, my side is winning, Latino, etc. We are here to drive business growth for ourselves, for our clients, for our organizations. I think the question is, what can we do with this information? I like to talk about culture because another assumption that I hear a lot during my 27 years working on this here in the US is, Isaac, if you're saying to me that the majority of the Hispanics that live here are born here, so they're gonna be assimilating the A word, assimilating. They're going to learn English since they're born. They're going to be exposed to the American culture. So they're going to be more and more Americans. So in the limit, at one point, it doesn't matter. You're going to be outdated. There's no point of talking about Hispanic population because they're going to be assimilating like immigrants in the 20th century assimilating to America. You have heard that, right? You're nodding the head, sir. Yes, I heard that. But this is not true. This is not what consumers are telling us. This is a data This is a data that's coming from MRI Siemens, which is a very, very famous and high reputation research study. They ask a series of questions to Hispanics, and one of the questions is, my cultural and or ethnic heritage is an important part of who I am. If the assimilation theory was correct, the natural path of that graph would be declining. Culture and heritage would be less and less important over the years. This is a 2017-2021 view of the report. And what you can see is that the actual responses from Hispanics is going on the other direction. It's becoming more important, from 73% of Hispanics responding yes to that question to 82%. And if actually I did that, I broke down by younger population, millennials and Gen Zs, the number is actually larger. There's more interest in Latino culture, music, sports, food. The CEO for Iberia Foods was talking about that. And even language. But a lot of people equate Hispanic marketing to Spanish language speaking or reading. Spanish is very important, don't get me wrong, but that's a very narrow view of the US Hispanic marketplace. It's a bilingual, bicultural consumer that's very proud of who they are, very proud. However, they are also not seeing themselves representing in the society. Overall in the society, this is a page from another study from Nielsen. And Nielsen in 2018, that's the yellowish, and 2023, the white column, they asked this question: are my values, Latino values, Hispanic values, represented and shared on pop TV shows and movies? And the numbers actually came down from 55% to 51%. By the news and media, down 55 to 48%. I'm going to go to politicians, 49 to 37%. And here, large brands and companies, which is where I work, and a lot of you work every day, the numbers are also down from 54 to 45%. And when I click on Generation Z, younger consumers, the numbers are even worse. They came down from 59 to 41%. So, the demographic trends are clear. US Hispanic population growing with US-born Latinos and Hispanics. They are very proud of who they are, and they want to see themselves reflected in several aspects, but they're seeing the market going the other direction, right? This is an opportunity for professionals like you, professional like me. This is a great opportunity because in the marketplace where it's very, very hard to differentiate brand A from brand B, this can be a source of differentiation, okay? So how is the market actually approaching these opportunities? Actually, in a not very good way. There are some myths, there are some things that people are saying and doing that's not capturing the lion's share of the demographic and cultural opportunity. Have you heard about total market? Total market is a theory, a marketing theory created around the financial crisis of 2009 and 2010 that says, don't listen to Isaac Mizrahi, not necessarily with these words, but says, it doesn't matter if it's a Hispanic, if it's a Black, an Asian consumer, everybody is everybody. Let's serve them as consumers, right? If they want to buy diapers, let's serve them ads about diapers, and let's ignore the background. That way we can save money. We actually can spend less on advertising agencies, media plans, production. CFOs love total market. But total market, as much as we need to be efficient with our budgets, it's an efficiency play. It's not an effectiveness play. And we marketers are in the business of growing business. Effectiveness is what we are looking for. ROI is what we are looking for. No CMO gets congratulations on the board of directors by being efficient with the budget only. They are fired if they are not growing their business. So we are in the growth business. So the total market one-size-fits-all approach, it's not working because it doesn't recognize the idiosyncrasies and the opportunities that I showed in the previous slide. Hispanic consumers saying, where I am, why you're throwing me this communication, this advertising that doesn't connect to me at an emotional level? The other thing is the translation approach. You know what? You're right, Isaac. I'm going to take my ad developed for people in Minnesota. I'm going to translate to Spanish. And maybe I'm going to do an accent, like a Cuban accent, that I'm going to air in Miami. People are going to love. Consumers are very savvy nowadays. They know when something is authentic and something is not authentic, right? So translation, yeah, it's a good effort, but a good effort in 1975, not in 2026 anymore, right? the one that I like the most is the tropicalization. I had a client that came and said, you're right. We are not going to translate. We're going to tropicalize the creative idea. And I say, what the heck is tropicalize? Well, we have a mariachi in the ad. We have a grandma saying hola. We bring some stereotypes. Well, I didn't want to go there. This is tropicalization, but it doesn't work, guys. If you're really serious about the Hispanic marketplace, the key word is authenticity. Consumers are very, very savvy nowadays. They know who wants their business only or who wants to show that they want to have a meaningful connection. So, what's working? This is a very short summary of what's working based on my experience. To be very clear, I'm not here to say this is the Bible, this is exactly what needs to happen. But, it's an experience based on many, many years of success cases, ROI, growth, market share expansion. First of all, let's be very clear that even though I work in an advertising agency and I love advertising, in order to win in this marketplace, you need a marketing plan, a business plan, not only creative ads. Creative ads maybe is going to be step 6 or 7 on a very comprehensive plan that you should create. Just doing advertising to Hispanics is not taking consideration very important aspects like distribution, pricing, customer service, packaging, merchandising, right? And if you don't have all these aspects figured out, chances are, no matter how great the creative idea can be and the advertising can be, the media plan can be, you're not going to succeed because advertising is part of an integrated marketing business plan. So if you want to capture a lion's share, if you want to leapfrog your competition, you have to take in consideration the Hispanic segment from a business standpoint. A few years ago, PepsiCo, which is one of my clients, which is ironic because I came from Coca-Cola, elevated the head of multicultural marketing to a general manager of a business unit. Marissa Solis, who is now a big VP at the NFL, was the general manager of the Hispanic business unit and dealt with aspects of the business beyond advertising. That's, for me, the right and smart way to approach it. Second, investments need to be proportional to the segment size and growth. Here's where there is really no formula, but common sense tells me that if Hispanics represent 25% of your sales, I'm making a hypothetical number, 50% of your growth, which I see almost every day with my clients and prospects, and you invest 3% of your marketing budgets on Hispanic segment, there's something wrong. Investments need to be at least directionally proportionally to the size of the opportunity, the current size on your portfolio, the growth, the future projections that you may have. Otherwise, you're going to be kidding yourself. And a lot of marketers, a lot of CMOs, they fail exactly on this area. They tend to be very conservative. Budgets tend to be a repetition of last year's budget, which are repetitions of the 5 years ago budget or the 10 years ago budget. But here's the dichotomy. How you're going to reflect a growing segment that every year or every 5 years or every 10 years changes dramatically if you're still considering budget allocations based on 2010, 2005, 2000s. So at one point, a reset on budget and resources allocation, and I'm saying resources instead of budget because it's not only about money, it's about people's priorities and time too, is essential. If you're not serious about allocating the right talent, the right time, the right energy, the right budget behind the segment, you may not be able to capture the pot, the gold pot in the end of the rainbow. Demographics is important, but culture, understanding values, understanding beliefs is very important. A lot of the communication to Latinos nowadays in the US is in English. So language is important, but understanding what moves the segment is extremely, extremely relevant because this is more or less how it goes. And I work in advertising, I love marketing, but sometimes we are a little bit blind that most people, average people, don't like advertising. They think advertising is an interruption. They think marketing has a bad reputation. They actually pay to skip advertising, right? My kids hate that my music streaming, it's actually free. So it's interrupted by advertising every 5 or 10 minutes. And they say, but Spotify pay whatever per month. And so there is a generation of people that actually don't think advertising is a cool thing. As I grew up in Brazil, creative directors were celebrities, right? The way to break away this complacency against advertising and marketing is being relevant. It's being authentic. So bringing values and cultural aspects of the consumer's life increases the chances of people paying attention, resonating, sharing, talking about your message, your brand. And this is not a theory. This is proven. This is proven research that culture, values, attitudes, and beliefs, when packed in a way that's smart, that's creative, that's authentic, increases awareness, consideration, and purchase. When I came to the US 27 years ago, this was a theory that was a gut feeling. Now it's not a gut feeling anymore. It's actually research. Research from Nielsen, from the ANA, from other institutes. Continuing the list here, effective Hispanic marketing needs true experts. You say, but this is so basic. Yes and no. A lot of companies, they want to do Hispanic marketing, and they say, well, who's going to be leading this? Well, I don't know. Why don't we actually have Maria, because she speaks Spanish? But Maria may not know anything about marketing and Hispanic marketing, right? And the same thing happens in some consultancy companies. You know what? I'm going to hire somebody that I know lived in Colombia for a few years to lead this. We have experts, and actually here in this room, there are many of them that do this for living. They are experts on the Hispanic segment in the US. Talk to them, hire them, invest on the consultancy of the people that know how to do this. Sometimes they may not even be Latinos or speak Spanish, but they are experts on this. You don't play with something as big as the Hispanic segment and improvising. And finally, consistency. A lot of people come to me and say, Isaac, I don't have the big budgets. I'm not a Pepsi, a Coke, a McDonald's. I cannot beat them. But one of the things that I learned in this almost 3 decades working in this market is the size of the budget. It is important. I'm not going to lie to you. But there are several ways you can overcome that. But consistency is key. I cannot tell you how many brands start investing on Hispanic marketing, year 2, year 3, change a CEO, change of CMO, start from scratch. Abandon Hispanic market. Just 3 or 4 years ago, later, somebody raised their hand and say, I have a great idea, let's invest in the Hispanic market. And they start from scratch. And all the learnings from the previous years, they disappear. There is no memory of what has been done, victories, losses, learnings about the consumer. This happens all the time. So being consistent, investing over time, learning, capturing these learnings, evolving your program over the years, regardless of the turnover of executives, is extremely beneficial for the brands that want to win in this marketplace. So, culture impacts attitude and beliefs. Attitude and beliefs impact behaviors. If you want to learn more, I invite you to do a little bit of research on Nielsen. Nielsen has done tremendous amount of data around this ROI. And Nielsen has a very interesting thing going on because some of you know Nielsen. They have retail scan data, and they have also people meters, TV audience information. So they can actually cross what was the ad air to a household and how that household consumed from a CPG mostly standpoint. And they were able to track years of data, and they concluded that custom Hispanic content deliver 4 times ROI than just translating ads from English to Spanish. SIM is a tool from the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. So they actually gather information and concluded the same thing, that ads perceived with high cultural relevance versus low deliver positive brand perceptions that's twice the size of ads that didn't. And furthermore, 3 times more advertising effectiveness. And then Kantar also did some own research with different sample, different methodology, and concluded the same thing. And the headline is what these 3 studies had in common, that cultural relevance drives purchase intent. Culture drives purchase intent. This is not a feel-good, kumbaya, let's celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, hola que tal. No, this is business. This is actually one of the few driving forces of US growth that marketers have at their disposal nowadays. So, let's see who's doing that in action. I brought 2 case studies from couldn't be different brands. The first one is for Intuit QuickBooks. Are you guys familiar with QuickBooks? So software, an app, right, allows you to do invoices, payroll, a lot of small business, sometimes individual owners. Hispanics lead in small business creation in America. Hispanics love to dream about owning their business. So when you're talking about culture, you start to understand there is something beyond the demographics. They came to us a few years ago and said, here's our general market ad in English. Do you want to translate? Do you want to transcreate? Do you want to tropicalize? What do you recommend? They have never done any Hispanic campaign, never. And we told them what I'm sharing the summary here. And they gave us the freedom to do what I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to show you for those who are not familiar is not an ad. It's a case study. I think it's a 2-minute, 3-minute video that summarizes months of campaign. Okay? So I'm going to play it, and I'm going to have some comments at the end.
What is this?
Es un cafecito.
I go, dude, look at me. I'm not a Ito. I'm a Ande.
Latinos love to add ito at the end of their words.
Asadito, corderito.
Despacito.
Ito is a diminutive that makes everything sound really small.
Papá, ¿te puedo pedir un pequeño favorcito?
Got coquito.
Latinos even name their businesses using ito. El taquito, el sueñito, el torito. QuickBooks wanted to help Latino business owners grow, but we had to overcome a cultural habit of thinking chiquito. So we teamed up with a Mexican soccer star with an iconic Ito nickname, Chicharito.
In English, my nickname means little pig.
Together, we helped Latinos to stop thinking Ito and start thinking Ote, or big.
Walk around any barrio and you'll find lots of small businesses just like El Mercadito, El Cafecito, El Rinconcito. We love using Itos. Even I'm Chicharito. But wait, just because your name sounds small doesn't mean you can do big things. With QuickBooks, Carmencita runs her barcito like El Barzón.
The cultural nuance of the tiny business names instantly resonated with our audience. It also caught the attention of the media. We followed it up with a content series where Chicharito used his goal-scoring expertise to teach entrepreneurs how to reach their own goals.
To make a goal, you need to trust your teammates. So it's probably best not to trust your primito with your expenses.
He's got a point.
Latino entrepreneurs on social media helped us spread the mensajito even further.
Even though we have Ito in our business name, we've always dreamed big, like a negociote.
Our campaign helped QuickBooks expand its footprint in the Latino community further than ever before.
No me diga.
But most importantly, it helped business owners realize that every small negocito can grow into a big negociote.
We should celebrate with a copa. That would be nice.
The insight was very clear. Hispanics, no matter how big is their business, they still think the business is very small. If they're very small, I don't need QuickBooks. I can have my primo, my cousin, doing the books, everything managed on notebooks, nothing official. And when they want to expand their business, they cannot get a loan because they don't have their numbers, their P&L, their expenses organized. And if they cannot get a loan, they cannot grow. This is the opposite of a white Caucasian that doesn't even have a business on their garage and is already thinking about $1 billion IPO. This is cultural. This is culture. So every time you hear about culture, yeah, Bad Bunny is culture, but these are the idiosyncrasies that we bring from our grandparents, from our parents. No, you already have 3 stores. Why think about a 4th one? And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying how a brand can capture a cultural insight, transform in a creative idea, and get things moving, going on. In English, in Spanish, social media, this, my friends, is the benchmark. And this is not Coke, Pepsi, Apple. This is QuickBooks. I love QuickBooks, but come on. It's not exciting, right? For me, it is. For them, it is. But it's not one of those sexy brands that are out there. If they can do it, anyone can do it. I sold white rice with Hispanic campaigns, and there is nothing more boring than white rice, not differentiated, and we achieved double-digit growth campaigns with that. Because consumers, Latinos, Hispanics, they want to see culture represented. They want authentic, meaningful messages to break this clutter of meaningless marketing and advertising offers and campaigns out there. McDonald's is our largest account. It's one of my beloved accounts. That's the next case study. I want to compare QuickBooks and McDonald's. McDonald's did something very, very interesting a few years ago. This is pandemic, post-pandemic campaign. I have some of my McDonald's leads here with me today. It's a very interesting case study. I'm going to play a very similar approach. It's a video, it's a 3-minute video case study, and I'm going to make some comments. Yes, there's going to be a celebrity. You all know who he is. But I want you to pay attention to the integration of a creative idea with the business, and specifically the e-commerce business. I'll give you J Balvin.
Hola mi gente, soy J Balvin. Les presento mi orden favorita de McDonald's.
Let's go.
When the J Balvin meal hit McDonald's restaurants across the country, fans went crazy.
This is the new exclusive J Balvin meal.
Un pico con cara de J Balvin.
But we noticed many of them were craving something to go along with their Big Mac and Oreo McFlurry. More music. And it just so happened that Jay left off one color from his multi-platinum Colores album that's synonymous with McDonald's, Dorado. A color that symbolizes optimism, joy, good vibes, and the right to shine. All attributes that live at the core of being Latino. And it just so happens to be McDonald's favorite color. We started by teasing fans on Twitter of a possible music collab between Jay and McDonald's. And it didn't take much to get everyone's attention. But while the world was trying to figure out what was coming, we made sure Jay's biggest fans had the inside scoop.
Thank you guys. Thank you to all the fans that support me 100%. If you want to see all the exclusive, go to the McDonald's app and check it out.
And we sent them to the McDonald's app. The only place to access Jay's newest song, Dorado, a music video idea we gave Jay to write lyrics to.
Me fui con esta, el ambiente se presta. Aquí lo que no se sabe se inventa. Tenemos la gente contenta, porque donde hay un latino hay fiesta. Ay, que no me esperen en la casa, que si esta noche no regreso es porque estoy vacilando con mi raza y qué pasa. Ay, que se despierten los vecinos, este party no lo termino. Gracias mamá por hacerme latino. Latino, montada en los arcos dorados, como se sabe. Donde comen 2, comen 3, esto más cabe. Esto es pa' cogerla suave. Más no me espere, despierta que yo llevo llave. Vamos, donde sea. Pasarla bien en la idea. Hasta en carro ajeno se pasea. Yendo al grano, que sea. J Balvin, man.
That's right, the first ever debut of a music video on a QSR app. When it was finally time for the world premiere, we did it on a night all eyes were on Jay.
El Latin Grammy es para...
J Balvin,
We're so excited!
And the love for the song was so strong that the internet decided to take over.
Y démosle play. J Balvin, ¿qué está pasando aquí, brother?
¡Oh! ¡Qué fuerte, qué bueno! Me encanta. Está súper bien hecho el vídeo, es todo un flash mob y está todo con J Balvin.
placing Dorado and McDonald's all over the web. Would you like fries with that track?
Let go.
So, needless to say, J Balvin, very famous. He launches an album called Colores. Each track is a color. There is no Dorado. We came to him and we wanted to advertise his famous orders, creating a song from scratch. Not only we create a song, but the song talks about the pride of being Latino in the US. Going back to that slide, remember, consumers saying, I don't see myself in my culture. Let's do the reverse of that and let's show that we are not only seeing, but we are proud of it. We convince him to write together with us a song. And we didn't give the song for free. You had to download the app. For the first 48, 72 hours, you could only find the song on the McDonald's app. You had to download to see it. People were having FOMO. How can I see this video that everybody's talking about? And they downloaded the app, and the rest is history. One of the most awarded ideas that McDonald's had in the past few years came from the Hispanic segment. QuickBooks, McDonald's, they couldn't be more different. But both of them showed that understanding the consumer, understanding what is to be relevant and authentic in the connections can drive outstanding results. I want to thank you for your attention. I'm going to leave here my information, also a QR code if you guys are interested on the book, and I'll take a few questions. Thank you, appreciate it.
Are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, sorry. Hi. I think someone of you might have seen me yesterday. My name's still Sophia. I'm still an assistant professor at the University of Miami, thankfully. They haven't fired me yet. I, of course, am really theory-driven, and I thought it was really interesting that you were talking about this theory of total market doesn't work in the United States. I wrote a textbook on international advertising, and one of the theories that we have in international advertising is the concept of globalization, that there are certain markets and certain consumers that we can standardize that advertising message to. If this theory of total market doesn't work in the United States, do you think that the theory of globalization still stands?
That's a great question. I think that we have to be careful with the absolutes. It works and it doesn't work. Real life doesn't operate like that. For instance, Nike has an amazing global brand, but they're still, and now we're going to be seeing World Cup campaigns, global, but they still invest in local, in relevant market. Apple is actually developing a multicultural department, actually led by a friend of mine here in Miami. And Apple is famous to be a global brand. There's very fewer brands in the world with a global appeal than Apple. And Apple is developing US Hispanic campaigns. And Lionel Messi lives here in Miami a lot because of the Apple TV partnership. So I don't think this is a binary answer. There is still room and role for global campaigns and global brands. Maybe the wise ways to complement when relevant with local authentic messages. I don't think a brand can survive only with global messages because there is a high probability they're going to be missing opportunities of authentic local insights, right? So I think the best way, and I came from a Coca-Cola world that, we always look for global opportunities, is to balance, complement global and authentic local. That's the same way I see the US Hispanic. I don't think US Hispanic replaces the marketing to other consumers. The best way, in my opinion, based on what I've seen of success, is platforms that work for the US market, complemented by segment, and the US segment, the US Hispanic segment being the biggest one, leading from a multicultural standpoint, this complementation, and injecting Hispanic insights in general market messages too. So that's how I see, but thank you for your question.
Hi.
There's a gentleman. There is in the
Sorry.
back. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Diana Lesashian of PDG Insights. I actually grew up at Kantar and Nielsen and now own my own market research firm focused on Latino consumers. My question is really kind of tapping into this broader question of authenticity, right? Because I think you've given two real examples, and research does show that Latino consumers are going to call you out if it feels inauthentic. So as you look at particularly people who are in the room today that are coming in from Latin America, what are ways that you can kind of recommend them breaking through and really tapping into that true origin story of we are who you are versus American brands that are trying to kind of sometimes inauthentically slap Spanish on things and say we support you versus actually getting who they are?
Thank you for your question. It's a great question, and you know, it can take hours to answer, but I'm going to give you my short version. Consumer insights, consumer research, right? Don't get the cousin, don't get your aunt, don't think your 17-year-old teenager son or daughter knows everything about 65 million people. Invest time and money to listen to the consumers and work with the experts, because the line that divides a stereotypical idea and an authentic idea may be very blurred, right? The intentions may be good, but you actually may be reinforcing stereotypes in your message, because a lot of clients, they like to approve what they feel about the Hispanic segment, and a lot of them carry misconceptions and preconceived ideas, unfortunately. Thank you. I think there's time for one more. There is a gentleman here that raised the hand. Yes. I don't see a mic coming in the direction. Yep. Yeah? But, well, I can repeat your question. Sorry, sir. I'm going to stay here. If you want to ask the question, you can ask me later. Ooh.
To be productive about how they use their advertising dollars. And when they think about the Hispanic consumer, they talk about the dark-skinned American consumer. And they think that going after Hispanics and maybe African Americans could be a way to do it right and save a few dollars. Have you seen that happen? And I would love your thoughts about that.
Yeah, the people of color, right? The famous people of color. You know, it's a great question. Is yes, I've seen companies saying, yes, Isaac, it's not total market, but let me bundle all non-white Caucasians in one umbrella, and they call this BIPOC. Going back to what I just said, I don't think that works, because unless you're very lucky that you find an insight that's authentic for an Asian, for a Black, for a Latino consumer, you're losing authenticity for the sake of efficiency. So you may pretend that you're saving money by having one campaign, one agency, one production for the three segments, the multicultural segments, but you may be diluting the power of authenticity. So I'm personally not somebody that likes the idea. The agency that I work with, Alma, we do some African-American campaigns, but never we put the same insight from a Hispanic to African-American. We treat that distinct segments. The African-American segment is big enough, has a significant heritage and tradition in this country, and imposing a Hispanic insight to them is going to fail. It's really going to fail. So, but thank you for your question.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.